problems together by combining historical, climate, food, and economic data so you can make informed decisions as we shift into a new era. Here's what was, this is what's coming. Our world is never going back to 2019, so what will the new era look like? And most importantly, what is immediate that will affect the pocketbook and the outlook into next year so we can all get ready? Thank you for joining. I'm your host, David DuByne. Right along here with Ransom Godwin tonight. Thank you for joining and spending your valuable time in this crazy world. Hope we can give you some insight, and I'm looking for insight. And with our conversation coming together, well, maybe we can paint a wider picture as to why things are happening now, maybe to protect yourself in the future. And when I say that, I'm only talking 4 months from now, because I don't know if anybody saw, after all this crazy banking contagion was going on, the Fed officially announced through the Treasury that they are now going to issue the Fed coin, or Fed Now, which is a wallet that is going to deposit directly into everybody's account. So with that being said, it seems like it's poised right now for the collapse to continue, the contagion to continue, but not in one single supergiant event. It seems like it's going to be steps of what we just saw to milk as much money out of the system. And eventually when Fed Now goes live, even though they lied to us about how long it would take to get the tech ready for this, what do the governors of the Federal Reserve say? We're going to the digital coin here in July. So between now and then, what little surprises could we expect? So Ransom, thanks for joining tonight. Everybody out there listening to us live on Rumble, Vigilante TV, Brighteon, the YouTube channels, Twitter, Facebook, right here from Revolution Radio every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight. Ransom, what kind of week has it been for you? I'm glad that we're dealing with the shiny again. I like looking at pictures of gold. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy.
I've been actually wondering how long, the money's going to last. I've been looking around. I see people doing shopping, like a lot of shopping, like where they bring home a whole truck or van load of stuff. So I see the anxiety on just the public every time I go outside. I've been trying to kind of ignore them and try to sort my seeds. I've been looking at all my seeds. I'm wondering what I can grow to be free, because I'm looking at, every time I turn on the internet, I see some of this transformation of wealth activity happening. And it is kind of scary, because, we've talked many times about people all of a sudden not being able to get their money. And when you see the stuff that's gone down recently, that at any time that's going to happen. So the question is how long will the fiat currency last until they switch it over to a rationing type system, universal income? They have so many names for it now, but basically what it is at some point in the near future, they are going to turn off the job market. So it's going to be up to private wealth to pay for things that they're getting done. As we've seen in the last couple of years, they just want to shut off the economy. And then when you start seeing this theft is what I think it is. Every time I see one of these scandals happening, from Bernie Madoff to Exxon, or what was that? I forget the name of the company. Enron, excuse me. There's always one of these every couple of years.
You could buy the sign now, and the sign's super expensive.
Well,
right off the old Enron building, they took it off, and now it's like $1 million sign. Crazy.
Well, like an heirloom from a begotten time where money was worth money
until cracked open.
Yeah, so I just see this as more transformation of wealth here, and then inflation. On top of that, the food costs are skyrocketing. People are starting to catch on that this is going on. So I wonder literally how long will the money last until they say, there's just really not enough money out there in the economy for an economy to be happening. Basically, I'm looking from end to end car sales, used car sales, but the big deal is the food, right? Because here's this article right here from the Wall Street Journal, and it's no joke. Life is so expensive. People are nostalgic for 2021. Inflation makes it pine for low-priced days of the year or two ago. Faulty memories aren't helping, but they're kind of joking about people are missing the 90s, the 80s, all of these things where we could at least feed ourselves relatively easy. Even if you were in the lower end of the middle class bracket, you had no problem feeding your family if you were having income. And right now, it's not even that people can't earn the money. It's more that they're just price gouging on everything and sewing up the markets where they're shrinking them, where there's less chicken, there's less beef, there's less eggs, there's less milk. And it's not because they can't produce it. It's just, it seems to me, it's a giant, transformation of wealth. But in the meantime, they also are just breaking the back of entrepreneurship from coast to coast, at least here. And then when I look over at what's going on in France and, all of the things with the farmers in the other country, you could see it's a worldwide shutdown, and they think that everybody's just going to, get used to it incrementally if they just do it in the right way in the name of the planet and all of these different ideas that they're brainwashing the younger generations with. It's even hard to have intellectual conversation with, and I don't want to be mean, but a younger person with a alternate view of the universe, because I feel like, they're in an unarmed battle there. They have a different perception of history, of the way the world works, everything from having to work day to day to just earn your own keep. And that would be true no matter what system's in place. You're going to have to be working. So I hate to break it to those. There's all kinds of TikTok videos out there now of Generation Z complaining about the idea of having to get up in the morning and work for something daily for years on end until they have something. And that's just the reality, no matter what system's in charge. So I hate to break it to them. They're going to have to figure something out, because things are really starting to look dark as far as the distribution of resources for the 8 billion people on the planet. It seems like there's a massive shutdown in food production, power production. And once again, I've been seeing this idea pop up of Pleistocene animals taking giant swaths of land where people can't live anymore because they, to save the planet, they're going to bring back extinct animals, and that's coming from none other than their new Greta, the more attractive younger Greta that was kind of at the World Economic Forum this time and was there. I'm sure Greta's not thrilled that they replaced her with a more consumer-friendly version of the climate crisis there, but she's talking about that. And where do you think she's getting these ideas? It's from these people that are spilling their guts about their plans for the near future and this reset.
If you have to get up in the morning and go to work, I can give you some results in under 90 days. It's called plant a seed, tend to your garden, and you get free food. That's not really a job. That's just enjoyment, going out, put your fingers in the soil, listening to the sounds of the morning. There's a lot more activity, more birds. Geese are coming back. There's all kind of honking down by the pond in the mornings now. Saw some deers on our cameras early, but I didn't see them in person. They're out, before sunrise. But, right now is a good time to wild forage too, because I saw plantains, dandelions, henbit, mustard green, and spring onions just walking around today, walking back and forth from the chicken coop just in the front 2 acres of the place here. There's a lot of things starting to kick off right now in terms of edibles and those really supple leafy greens that you can get now, because, as you come into the summer, you got better choices. But right now, the wild forageables are the most supple they're going to be for the entire year. So keep your eye out over the next month and a half, 2 months for these, because we're going to have to reframe what work is. Traditionally, anybody like myself who's had a job and had to do that drudgery of getting up at a certain time and going to a place where you're gritting your teeth because the yearly review, you can do better, and you're like, I just don't. That I did the best I could, and you're telling whatever. If you've ever had one of those kind of things, we've experienced that. That's getting up and going to do work, which was, maybe I didn't use my mind correctly to try to manifest the reality that I wanted. I was just going with the river, just without any kind of, I guess, rudder on it. This is when I was younger. But finally, I learned how to use the mind to create that, to bend it, to be able to morph and bend this physical, I guess, energy plane in front of us with your thought and action. I don't work anymore. I really don't. I just enjoy what I do, and I create the circumstances, still have money coming in for doing what I like to do. So reframing the way you can work is going to be an essential. And touching back to nature, helping others raise food, for example. We got 10 eggs today out of the chickens, 10. And it's low layings period because it's still cold. We're going to probably get 12 or more eggs per day come the summertime. And getting the big gardens out, all the raspberry patches. We're planting pink champagne currants in a different spot this year. It's just, things, if we would have looked back, Cindy, let's get nostalgia with 2021, like you said. If we would have looked back 2 years from today, in the very beginning of 2021, we would have seen the plan for the Great Reset and how they told us very specifically that they were going to take away the power, reduce the manufacturing, cut off all supplies of anything you buying online, limit your food production, reduce your calorific intake. And that was all broadcast. But no, see how slow drip it's been to the point where, wow, we notice now. But that incrementalism has hit that rollover point where you're going off the side of the waterfall where it's you can feel, the gravity's pulling away from you. We've reached one of those moments. So some other distraction needed to come in. And I do believe that what you're seeing right here, is to mask the massive food deficit across the planet, especially now that the numbers are going in the books in the Southern Hemisphere. Really low yields. Australia, 33% down on like the barley. They say they have a wheat crop, but, they can't export it. So it's unverifiable, how much wheat's truly coming out because they can't export. There's export backlogs for some reason still ongoing, but for sure, barley was down 30%. This came from their own ag bureau. And you look down at Argentina, they were down 50% on a lot of things. South Africa, the corn crop was down at least 35%. And as you look around, these are like the big behemoths. Brazil, unknown at the moment. They had stellar exports because they had a surplus from last year. Second corn crop, which is the smallest one, came in decent, not very good, but they're trying to plant now for the biggest corn crop of the year. It's too wet and cool. They just can't get it in the ground. The seeds are going to rot if they put them in. So this one will be an unknown. It's a short duration crop. They use a real short growth species on this one. 60-day turnaround. Most of them are, 90, 80 days, something like this. This is a short season hybrid crop that they're putting in. Ukraine, I saw some crazy pictures of bombed out fields in forever as far as you could see. They're not planting on that. There's not enough fertilizer. The natural gas is not flowing from that pipeline to come back into Europe for manufacturing of fertilizers, which it used to. It's just everywhere you look. Bulgaria was calling 3x, a 300% increase over last year for all the farm inputs plus fertilizer, fuel, etc., to get it out of the field to deliver it to, I don't know, at the farm gate to a factory or something. They're talking about a 3x increase just to produce your food. And I want to know, is my internet off here? Because I've been having problems with the internet there, Ransom. So if I cut out, let me know.
No, you're good.
Okay, and here's the last thing. Yeah, because I saw my screen go black over there, and usually it does before I cut out. So if I cut out, I'll drop off, come back in. See, these food prices are going to run away from this point. But if you have a financial contagion at the same time, you could blame it on the financial contagion, supply chains locking up. QuickBooks quit working for a while there. Direct deposits weren't going in. So you can imagine if that's in the United States and our own companies, local, that are paying our own local employees, that's not making it to their bank accounts. I'm not talking all the other stuff we saw a few weeks ago. This is like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, accounts receivable weren't hitting, and there was something like 300 apps that were not functioning because of all the contagion happening and the mix-up in the banks and ownership and accounts, et cetera. That would explain away incredibly high food prices and non-food availability from different parts of the world without having to tell everybody massive increases in UVB radiation. The Hunga Tonga eruptions really disrupted the atmosphere in the southern hemisphere. Like, anything natural can't be a cause for everything we're seeing. It's going to be, I think one is to mask for the other. I really believe what we're seeing now with this contagion financially is to cover for the crop losses, to explain away why food's getting so expensive. And the SNAP cuts, the SNAP cards coming, I think they're reducing $90 at the end of the month here. How many people is that going to send to the street? That could have started contagion in itself with civil unrest because people couldn't afford the food. I mean, something's going on here, but the World Economic Forum broadcast exactly to the nth degree of what you're seeing in the world today, what was going to happen 2 years ago. They were very specific about it. It's almost a mirror. If you were going to watch one of their videos from 2 years ago and envision it in your head, you don't have to envision it anymore. It's here right this second.
It is. And you know what's really funny about, I was saying that I've been noticing that people have been shopping in bulk and then going back to their house with all this stuff, and you can see them piling it out. It means that they're planning for hard times. And most of the people I'm talking about are older than I am. So they feel like they're seeing the signs that they should probably stock up. But then when you really think about it, look at the shutdown of where you could buy food from coast to coast. And this kind of started with some rioting over some things in Ferguson, if you remember. Things started burning down. Well, since then, systematically in different places like Portland and New Mexico and all over the place, Albuquerque, like example, they're shutting down a Walmart. And the reason is because so many people steal. So many people grab what they want and they run out. They have violence there. There's people being assaulted there. And I remember back a little while when you were talking about when do we get to the time where the need for soldiers outside of the grocery stores, basically. And, some people will say, well, that's silly. They'll just put police out there. Well, if you haven't noticed, the police are a military force and can be. So what is the difference of having soldiers outside or just, uniformed police, whatever? The point is that they would have to arm the food supply with weapons because of the amount of people that either need it, want it, or think that they need it, regardless if they could pay for it or not. And then the unavailability because of the stores closing down in the higher violence areas. We used to have a 24-hour Walmart here. Matter of fact, this town that I live in was 24-hour everything. The convenience stores, the restaurants, you could go eat, you could go to Walmart and go shop. Now everything rolls up at 11 o'clock, and then now they're closing stores at different locations because of security risks. So when you add those two together, you can see that there is a big, thing in the near future where the distribution will just stop, and there will not even having to do with if it was delivered or not, but just there's no locations near you to pick it up. And if they are, you're fighting with, lots of other people. And increasingly, that sounds like a kind of a FEMA camp scenario, as it slowly train wrecks into that scenario by, what's going on. Lessening food, lessening hours, lessening locations. I don't know. What would you think if, all of your business was shutting down and you couldn't do business if people were being violent or stealing what you got? You would close down and go to an area where you could make money. The only problem is now we're going back to mandates. And mark my words, the mandates are coming again because they've kept us in a psychological fear cycle long enough to set up the next round of things that they're going to give everybody. So they give you this emergency here, like they know everybody's wondering where did $100 billion just go in a day? Are they ever really going to explain that, where people believe any story that anyone comes up with? To me, it sounds like a transfer of wealth to some kind of project somewhere. And if out in the open, they're giving hundreds of billions of dollars pushing into a proxy war, and then now we're watching all of these countries donating all of their weapons, and they're increasing the weapons and technology. First it was just drones, and then here's you a couple of tanks. You know what? You need some missile defense. Here's some missiles of your own. Here, we'll give you some planes. How long is that going to last before every nation there takes a side, and we're essentially in World War III now? It's just kind of a slow train wreck. Like I said, they're setting up the food channels and the power channels behind that. And I was just looking at an article basically talking about how China is bragging that they will be a better world order than the NATO New World Order style. And then you see them also shipping guns and body armor into Moscow. And then if you really start paying attention, you notice that there's hits going back and forth between the governments. Here's one person dead in FSB center that it got blown up. Somebody set off a bomb at their intelligence center. I guess that's the equivalent to their secret service over there. So there's all kinds of weird stuff happening. And, in the past months and weeks, all of the signs of a stock market financial system failure have been happening, in my opinion, where I see people jumping off the roof that are supposedly billionaires, people talking about massive losses. And then behind the scenes, what's going on? It seems like all of that money's being rearranged for whatever new system they're about to put in place right before our very lives. I don't think it's long now. It'll be a 5 to 10 year process, and the world will be something that you don't even recognize.
Yeah, I could agree with that. So just taking a note here. Can I give you a story of disappointment for today? But I'm going to keep it on a positive note. I make some of my own brandy and schnapps because I've been experimenting with a few different fruits, where this newest one here, this is a crabapple batch. We got a couple crabapple trees down the way here, so you can probably pick a couple 100 pounds of apples off of a tree, during the season. But at the end there, you can load up with 100 pounds in a day if you pick a lot. I usually do a 5-gallon batch, and I'm learning from a guy who already has a distillery, so he's just letting me use some of the equipment. And I put a piece of vanilla in here, vanilla bean that I bought from Madagascar, 5-star rated on Amazon. Got the fresh vanilla bean, or it was dried, but it was still fresh. It wasn't powdered. Put it in this. In my, when you take off the 4 shots, you get that first really strong. I try to do it in 8 pint jars, so then it comes out equivalent. So you just fill each jar up and then, move to the next one. So you don't have to really do any math. Divide by 8, fill each jar, and you're done off 5 gallons. But I put a piece of vanilla bean in there thinking it would change the taste, but it sure didn't. And that disappoints me because I have a whole piece of vanilla bean inside what is probably 155, 160 proof, or 100, yeah. And it didn't change the taste at all. That disappoints me. I'm going to have to get better with my skill of adding to try to flavor afterward. But the new system being rearranged in front of us, you can see it clearly that it is. So they've been talking about the BRICS currency here for a minute. Gold-backed currency, resource-backed currency, and I get it. You got to have value behind something if you're going to trade it. Well, America right now, sorry, there's really nothing behind it except the might of a former military that is in decline. And when you look at the fourth turning cycle, each successive generation, and either it's an 80-year turning cycle. Strauss, the book, The Fourth Turning. This is a good one. What we saw already was at the end of World War II was the end of that fourth turning and the beginning of a new cycle, the fourth turning, would culminate right now at the end. So you have to think about the developing countries of our planet now, what you might term as third world nations, or some of them that are, coming along. They're not really as developed as, say, the UK or something, but it's sort of in that middle tier, getting up to Japan style, but not quite back down somewhere like Cambodia, for example. Somewhere in the middle tier where it's really rocked up, a lot of wealth, a lot of, middle class evolving in this. We've run the course here in the Western world, as you understand it. It was a debt-based system. Debt-based. Like there's no more debt to issue. It's all been gobbled up. There's really nothing more. What do you need, a second, a third, a fourth house? No, you want to give people the basics like we got in the 1950s and 60s. Like your first starter home, your first automobile, your first washer and dryer set. The first baby carriage, the first this, the first that, the first bicycle for your kids, second bicycle for your kids. That's no longer possible in the Western world, but it is very possible in all these developing nations and, very underdeveloped nations to run for another whole 80 years and set up a similar system based on gold, probably for the first 30 or 40 years. And then it'll depeg 40 years from now and it'll be on a full debt system. But you got to think about every single nation. There's probably 80 or 90 nations, even 100, that could run from zero to where we sit in America over this next 80-year cycle easily. And that's what it's really all about is we've come to the end of the system. And most people are, coddled to the system. The system is the whole world. No, it's not. It's really, if you're living in the United States and you're listening to this and you have the very privilege of even having a radio or the internet connection to live to this, and I'm not talking privilege like all this garbage that's being thrown around now. I'm saying you really won the lottery because I bet there's 3 billion people on the planet that don't have the means to get to have a full functioning radio system in the house with the internet and everything that they could listen to so easily. Yeah, they could listen on the phone, but it's probably one family member has the phone and there's 5 or 6 other people that would be listening to this broadcast. You have the luxury of one TV in each room, one radio in each room, one computer in each room. That is nigh impossible and wildest dreams for 3 billion people on this planet. But if the crash occurs here in the West, the wealth's transferred, it's going to go to resource-backed, and that's going to be allocated to all small and medium-sized businesses across all of these developing nations. Think about how it was in America and Canada and Australia in the 1940s after World War II. People came back, they needed to set up again. Forget war cycle aside, I'm just talking at the end of that, when that chapter of history finished, everybody needed stuff. They wanted to expand at the same time. Well, it was the West, quote unquote, Western Alliance nations or the Western Bloc that was able to benefit. And you see where we sit today in the stratifications of countries.
Did he cut off? I don't know. We're definitely going. I was looking at Twitter the other day, and I saw people arguing over whether or not what they could put their money in because of recent times where the money seems volatile, the Bitcoin seems volatile, all of these different things that fail where they're scared to put their money in. And I was, being sarcastic, but for real when I was talking about, gold, silver, and cubes of products, because that will be straight up money no matter where you're at. Cubes of products of different things, medicinal things that you've been growing, and you save up. Jars of things will be equal to, a $5 or a $10 bill to someone. And you can trade for anything if it gets that bad. But I was looking at this article right here. The fear of mass employment due to artificial intelligence and robotics is unfounded, according to the Mises Institute. And they argue about all of these things, but they're mostly talking about how that AI is not going to do the physical things in life for you, like plowing the fields or putting the food in the buckets. The problem is that's absolutely is going to happen. They have so many products lined up right now as far as replacing a human being from weeding. I'm serious. There's robots for weeding, for plucking, for gathering, for almost everything. I've seen a robot put together a frame of a house quickly. And the robots that they're showing are always so backdated. So a few years ago, they were showing us robotics that looked clumsy. It couldn't go up the stairs. It couldn't jump. Now they're dancing ballet and jumping around platforms. And I've seen robots with guns on it. So everything from the soldier to the farmer, as far as employment, is actually in danger, or as far as being replaced and not necessary. So once the powers that be view the mass populace as a letter in a formula that needs to be gotten rid of, like Bill Gates. I always bring that back up because this little formula there has P for populace in it, and they're open about depopulating the planet by 2030, 2035, 2050. They have an entire multi-decade plan on how they're going to get rid of everyone on Earth. And then you're just like, oh, well, that's a conspiracy theory. But then when you start looking through the headlines and you see back to back stories of infrastructure destruction, manufacturing destruction, food distribution destruction, food actually being destroyed, and then the fact that there's less and less groups and entities creating the food, which means that on a global scale, the importance of feeding the masses is becoming less and less important, and more important is the transformation of land and wealth and assets. So if or when the money does pop, it would be nice to be able to know that you have things that were always, for the entirety of human history, considered money and always will be, because they have function and they're usable as a money. But just on top of that, just cubes or jars or of anything of high quality product that would give somebody the ability to last out hard times will be essentially gold. And that includes guns, ammo, silver that you made into medicine, as far as nanoparticles of silver for antibiotics, all of that stuff. Did you come back, David? I think you got cut off there.
Yeah, I did. We've been having a few problems with connectivity. It seems to be on a cycle, though. See, this is the thing for me, is it's been going on it started about 3 days ago, and it seems to happen about every 3 to 4 hours. So I'm going to mark the time, and I've been asking, I've noticed it been going out, and it seems to be pretty regular. So I'm going to mark the time down now, and I'll see when it occurs next. See, it won't happen between now and the end of the radio program. It'll be several hours from now, like probably around 1, 2 o'clock, something like that. But back again here. Yeah, and you got to think, what were those things? And I'm going to try to grow some tobacco this year. And I ordered, our sponsor here, True Leaf Market, Heirloom and Organic Seeds. I ordered a bevy of different types of tobaccos. Now, it's the first time I've grown tobacco, but it's well known in Tennessee and Virginia. They've been growing tobacco forever. So the soils are conducive. Rainfall patterns are awesome. Enough sunlight. It was a major cash crop here in Tennessee for 100 plus years. So I ordered all these different types, thinking the same way. So I ordered chewing tobacco type plant, one that's specifically turned into chewing tobacco. I got a couple varieties for cigar rolling. I got the outer wrapper and then the inner as well. And then I got different tobacco to, chop fine into what you consider rolling tobaccos for cigarettes, which again, if you compress that into a brick. And then I got some sacred tobaccos. And I got pipe tobacco as well. That leaf is specifically for pipe tobaccos. And, I got Aztec, got Rapa Nui, I'm trying to think of a few others. I don't have them all with me. I got 4 different types of very high nicotine, 13 to 15% nicotine, way above anything. That's generally ceremonial, but, during times, and we can't grow here in Tennessee. the green. It's illegal here, but there's so many other states around that you can. Even hemp, they were having trouble renewing the licenses and things, and they were trying to, a few years ago, to try to bring it to a cash crop, but very conservative politics took back over, and it was like, hey, we're not having that in our state. No, you get it out of here. So wherever you are, and there's some states I'm sure it's illegal to grow tobacco, where in Tennessee it's not. I already have a registered farm. I'm able to, produce what I want, aside from getting special licenses for things like hemp, which I'm not going to touch with a 1,000-foot pole, because here's the thing. Even the USDA to put a hoop house, an FDA funded, or I should say a USDA funded, United States Department of Agriculture funded hoop house, like 100-foot long, and they give you the funding for it, and they have a crew that comes out and installs it and everything. Just that alone, forget the hemp program, you have to sign off that they're able to come onto your property 24 hours a day at any time with no knock and just go walk around your property. Now with the hemp, that includes your house, that includes everything at any time, no knock warrant, just anybody can blaze in at 2 a.m., whatever they want to bring in and look for anything, because the USDA putting up a hoop house overstepped the bound like a million miles. But to sign off to be able to come on property, no knock into your house at any time, that's so far, that past Jupiter. That's not happening. So, know your state laws and what you can grow and what you can produce, because that's going to be part of the key too, is staying within the letter of the law while you move through these times, to stay squeaky clean, to be able to have the option to still, that nobody will look at you in sort of a criminal element wise, like those guys are solid, that crew's solid, that part of the neighborhood solid, that family member or that neighbor is solid, that they don't even look at it because they know that you're always on the table, and that's the kind of reputation you want to get in one of these grid down times. You don't want to be the sketchy dude over there, because you just don't want to be that person during this time, because people are going to be wanting to rely on people, and it's going to be networks of people. And if you're the sketchy chick over there, sketchy dude over there, you got no chance of living through it. You really don't. So you got to think about going through the past. And, I was thinking one thing I wrote down here, you were talking about, our armed guards and thing. Well, that's where the term riding shotgun came from. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this. I'd heard the term, it's 1800s Wild West term, on the stagecoach, one person literally had a shotgun to guard it. But I tell you, when I was traveling in Guatemala, this is way back 1994, 1995. Guatemala. High crime rate, and in Honduras, I saw the same exact thing. They had 2 guys riding shotgun on a Coca-Cola truck. Like, this is the real deal. They got delivered, 2 dudes riding a modern Coca-Cola truck, 1994, to deliver out into, I wouldn't say the hinterlands, but, somewhere outside the capital going down the roads. You see the very same thing happening again. So my original call, I'll say this one last thing here. My original call last year was at the beginning of at the very end of 2021, like December of 2021, January and February of 2022. I was very clean to say that there would be guards in the supermarkets, and digital rationing cards would come out with the central bank digital currencies. And I was a little overzealous on my call, because I was saying this would occur in December, or December at the turn of the year, 2022 into the very beginning of 2023. Now, see, I was off on the timing, but I'm not off that much, and incredibly correct on exactly what's about to unfurl. But instead of being in December 2022, January 2023, maybe it is July of 2023. It'd be 6 months off on my call. So now I'm starting to revamp my timeline a little bit, looking at these different things here. But yeah, internet's going off, blinkety blink blink. Supply chain's breaking down. And Ransom, if I could ask you the question, you said there's anxiety in the public of people you're seeing buying in bulk out in the stores. Like, what demographic is the anxiety? Is it everybody, or is it the demographic and the older people that are out there running around with carts full of stuff going, we need to buy everything now? I'm just curious what your eyes saw.
That's absolutely right. It is older people. That's what I was noticing. It was all people older than me, the neighbors that I've seen that I actually know, and then just driving around when I go get things. I see people unloading their groceries, and no, it's never any of the millennial down generation because they're oblivious to what's about to happen. I hate to say that. They are living in a world where things that they think matter don't really matter when it comes down to it. And, when you were talking about that just a minute ago, the riding shotgun, and immediately, the stagecoach popped in my head even before you said it. And, they were shotgun protecting in the Wild Wild West. All kinds of guns, really. But they armed security everything. And it wasn't that they hired security all the time, even though there was that also. Just groups of people going anywhere, always were armed to the teeth to protect what they had. And those goods that they were traveling and having someone ride shotgun to help them protect while they controlled the horses was food, salt, ammo, all of the things you would think about that we were just talking about a minute ago as being products that could convert to money when money, is not working or is unavailable or hard to get. But think about this. Any little community, we talk about this a lot. You would have to have community to survive any kind of down. And if you've been paying attention, little portions of the U.S. have been going down where they're having bad things happening, massive flooding, blizzards, people trapped in their houses. And, it's just a little couple seconds on the national news if you're one of those people that watch it and you're like, oh, that's bad. But over and over again, we get proved right where you need to plan ahead, not only with the stuff that you have, but you were saying a minute ago about, the sketchy people not making it. Also, people that brag, if you're making a little bunker or a safe house or, anything, you're not going to tell people or show it to them or brag about it or, and then you get into that, what you were talking about with the hoop house and having the government involved in every aspect of what you're building, doing, which is obviously over intrusive. But if you were going to build anything like that, of course you wouldn't want government involved because government would then know about it. And then you would have people that know about it that work for government. And they would all know that you had a little bunker or a safe house or a panic room or any of that stuff. And then back to the community, you have to survive any of these things, really. If it's on a massive scale, like the fiat currency collapsing or a grid down failure from coast to coast or wherever you live in the world where nothing is working the way it's supposed to be. Food is now rotting. If you don't have backed up food, your medicine that needs to be refrigerated is now in danger of going bad and those people dying off. And then you have on top of that known groups out there. And I want to point your direction to this. And keep in mind that there are a big group in the U.S. too of lots of prisoners. We lock more people than anybody here in the U.S. But this is an article about El Salvador and the 65,000 people that have been arrested as a part of an anti-gang campaign. Now, just think about that just for a second. That's not even a dent in the organization that they're talking about. And that's 65. Can you imagine a group out there organized, looking for resources from everyday average sheeple? This is just the people that they locked up. So we're talking millions and millions of people in these organized groups, and they're in the U.S. too. They're all over the place. These are the kind of groups that you don't really think about from day to day because they're kind of out of sight, out of mind, but they are out there. And not only are they out there, but they are armed and they are organized. And I kind of talked about this last week when we were talking about having fuel to run your vehicles to protect your food. Not only that, you got to think about these organized groups that work internationally, intercontinentally, with millions of people. So, and then also this idea, if they're locking up all these people, what happens when they let them all out at the same time? And you can kind of think about that in the U.S. too, because there's a lot of talk from sort of left-leaning governments from coast to coast wanting to let out almost everybody. And that includes violent people that have before in their lives robbed, murdered people, and done other unspeakable things. But then you have groups like these, and I don't want to give them credit by naming which group it is, but if you look into that, they're very Stone Age type of violence that they do to people, very dark, demented stuff. And they're out there and they are going to want their own resources. So, I'm not saying the sky is falling, but if it so happens to fall, you're going to have a backup plan that involves interconnected amount of people that are skillful, serious, and about the situation that they planned out for, if that's makes sense.
Yeah, those those type of people, they'll pillage for a bit, but there's going to be a lot of pushback. When it gets down to it, people are going to realize what the situation they're in, and they're going to start defending, just like it was you described in the Wild West. And it was like that also, even if you go back, even the 1600s in Europe, going through the dark forest, going through the Black Forest in Germany. I mean, you traveled in a convoy. And it's been like that ever since. You travel in convoys for safety because there's more people. There was very few, like the Lone Ranger and like the whatever one person riding through the Black Forest by themselves never would have made it out of there, especially at almost at any time in Germany, except, today, because you got to think about, how many more wild animals there would have been and how many more, less police patrols there would have been and no cameras. And it really would have been a very scary forest to go through some of these areas, in the 1600s by yourself. Imagine in the 1300s. Wow. It's been like that since time immemorial, since we were fighting off dinosaurs. If you believe that timelines are mixed up and discombobulated, that maybe there were a few remnants left over as recent as humankind has witnessed them and described them in stones thousands of years ago. We didn't have paleontology then, but just saying, I got off topic. You can look out to the future and see a couple things. Where's the new grow zone going to be set up? Because I really believe in the beginning of my Adapt 2030 channel, I was always talking about this grand solar minimum and how it was going to affect food production globally and how governments would respond. And we are seeing that exactly. If you were to watch the Adapt 2030 playlist from the beginning, you would understand, you would absolutely see the same thing I saw occurring now, but it's going to get a little bit more, nail biting would be a good term for it as we move forward. The whole thing is the food production on the planet was going to be lost anyway and very greatly diminished because the cloud cells and the jet streams are moving out of place. And now we have this Hunga Tonga eruption. There's always a VEI-8 eruption that interferes with sunlight and things, but we got a water vapor eruption this time, which is going to deplete ozone in a rapid, catastrophic fashion that is literally going to singe fry the southern part of our planet with UVB radiation coming up in August, September, October, and November of this year. It was about the food. It always has been. I personally believe that global warming was made up in the 1990s because they understood, whoever had the cycles wired in, understood the onset was occurring right then. And there would need to be an excuse to explain to the normies why everything is going out of kilter in our climate system. It's a ready-made excuse. Like I'm telling you the same thing. Magnetic fields are going to cancel each other on the sun. That weakening magnetic field will in turn cause our magnetic field on the planet to get incredibly weak, and it won't lock those jet streams in place anymore. And they're going to go anywhere they want to for about 10 years. And we're already seeing it. We're not even to the low October of 2024 to say March of 2025 is going to be the lowest of the magnetic field canceling on the sun, which in turn on our planet will cause incredible gyrations in the atmosphere. And what we're seeing with snow all the way down near Los Angeles and San Bernardino, blizzard warnings, it's just a very small, like I say, brushing of what's to come. Crops are going to be lost anyway, and vast proportions of crops will be diminished to the point where you couldn't feed 8 billion people. You just wouldn't be able to. So then you start to look at it in a different way, like, if you brought the world up to where it was to use the slave labor force called workforce to build everything out that you needed to for whatever it is to this stage step, you knew you could get this far until the natural cycles would wipe humanity back a bit. So whatever was built out to this point has been built out to this point for a purpose, for the elite empowered families and whatever AI itself to leap to and through this dieback and then repopulation event that's going to occur over this next 10 years. I was talking about that. That's what the channel focused on the whole time. Still does, but now it's gone into the economy because, now it's the most important thing. It's all about the food. So we can see where it's going to go with the food. So, they're going to have to set up new growing areas. And this is where it goes into what I was talking about earlier. The 80-year cycle. It comes, it goes. The fourth turning. Well, the Africa and the northern Sahel area and actually Central Africa, all the way from Mauritania clear over to, let's say, Ethiopia and Eritrea, etc. That has been dirt poor forever. And tribal warfare and warlords and despots and you can throw your adjective in there and probably get a list about 50 deep of what has occurred in that whole area in the last 200 years. It's been off limits on purpose. But suddenly, you swing in a huge amount of new capital in there. You can turn North Africa and the Sahel into the largest growing area of the planet, hands down. It's larger than the size of the United States and Canada combined, with sunlight that would be equivalent to doing dual crop on a long rotation crop, 90-day to maturity crop. If you pulled the underground water resources from the Nubian sandstone aquifer and the Sousse aquifer out west off of Morocco and the huge, massive hundreds of thousands, if not millions of cubic kilometers of water under that area, and the above ground water rainfall is increasing with the West African monsoon as well. So then you switch the pendulum over there, and not only could you have all the food coming out of a single grow zone on the planet, which you could control, which would literally control humanity. Forget the central bank digital currencies. If you have your fingers in the full investment, in the full yield, and the full production coming out of a single area on the planet that you totally control for food production for the world, that's power. And I really believe that's part of it. They're going to control the North Africa Sahel area. They're going to flood a huge amount of cash in there. It will become the world's new largest grow zone, but it'll be tightly controlled. And since supply chains as we know them right now will have collapsed by that time, new supply chains will come out and they'll say, we need to make it more integrated, more fast, more efficient. That's what why we need CBDCs. It needs to be faster, more efficient, real time. And everything will come out of that one single grow zone outbound to the rest of the planet. This is how I envision it moving from this point forward. So the capital across the planet is going to be siphoned out of the Western Bloc countries. And it's going to be moved right over into the new emerging markets across the planet to bring them up to the U.S. wealth equivalent over the next 80 years. And put into play the largest grow zone on the planet that would probably stay there for 200-300 more years. Because this cycle on the grand solar minimum cycle is about a 400-year cycle. But I think this is a much more heavier, they call it a super grand solar minimum, like 5 cycles of these 400 years. I think we're coming somewhere close to that. But with the above ground water resources increasing year upon year, and then we have the underground water resources and huge amounts of money and labor over there. You can see where it's going to go. Now, when we come back from the break, I know we're coming along here. The new ISO 20022 is going to include different cryptocurrencies in addition to the Fed rolling out with their Fed coin. So the central bank digital currencies are going to have a base layer on it. That is what you know as some cryptocurrencies. I'm going to talk about these when we come back from the break. At the very center of this ecosystem, the only participants for anything financial, as you know, is SWIFT or interbank payment systems or sovereign debt settlements from country to country. It's only going to involve XDC Algorand, IOTA, Hedera Hashgraph, Stellar Lumens, Ripple, but at the very center of all that, Quant, which is Overledger, and then Constellation. And they're moving to a thing called Proof of Reputable Observation, or PRO. So if I was going to backtrack down to the center, everything, even Ethereum is like a little tiny square compared to what they show Quant being, and Constellation. But everything feeds off of that and through it to both sides. On the sovereign side, the corporate side, the interbank settlement side, the Bank for International Settlement side, the bigs like JP Morgan, etc., Circle. This is all directed through Quant and Constellation outbound for instant payments off of liquidity. RippleNet, instant payments. They got on-demand liquidity, so there'll never be another banking crisis, quote unquote, from Ripple. Stellar Lumens, that's like an instant flash payment. Now, Hashgraph, I'd heard in the beginning when I started learning about cryptocurrency way back in the day that they were going to move to Hashgraph, and I didn't understand what that was, but recently I've just understood it again, and wow, we're here. Talk about this when we come back from the break. Ransom, I rambled too long, man. I'm sorry. You got to come on. Bring us back on the show. I just talked too long coming us out.
Right back after this message.
streaming on 8 different platforms. We're up on Rumble, Vigilante TV, the Twitter at App 2030 channel, Mountain High Time, YouTube channel, Adapt 2030 YouTube channel. We're up on Twitter, Facebook, trying to get the message out and start this conversation about how we can move through solutions. Now, before the break there, Ransom, I rambled a little too long, but I was trying to get into the cryptocurrencies that are going to be used in the new financial system. You can already see the clear as day. They've already broadcast what it's going to be. They have to be 20022 ISO compliant, or in other ways, ISO 222. So something like this has to be it has to meet a certain set of standards for control, first thing, speed, and then scalability. Because what they plan to do is take the entire world and move it into this using, I'll say the different cryptos again here. Ripple will be the main one in conjunction with R3 Corda. Ripple has a new part of it that it's on-demand liquidity. So again, we're back to the liquidity crisis. It was the same thing happening in 2008 and 2009 when all the subprime mortgages people couldn't pay, and then suddenly the banks didn't have the capital and they're set with all these houses and they didn't have the liquidity. You know, it was the same thing again. It was a liquidity crisis based on bad loans for subprime mortgages, but this time it's what? It doesn't even matter on the liquidity issues, because that'll never happen again with Ripple on demand liquidity. Now, Stellar, a lot of people know that, XLM, Stellar. XDC, not too familiar with it. It used to be called Shinfin, XINFIN. Algorand, that is absolutely one that was talked about being used in the North Sahel for the Grow Zone. And IOTA, I'd seen it in passing, wasn't too interested. But the ones that I'm recently coming back to here that I'm learning more about are Hashgraph, Quant, and Constellation. Like I said, the Quant and Constellation are going to run everything. That is going to be the hub of the base layer of everything else to run off of. So Ethereum pales in comparison to what these are going to be used for. And what's so interesting, if you look at the pricing of this, you know, Quant is $100 and some dollars. Constellation's like $21. Hashgraph's a few cents. Stellar's like 8 cents. Algorand, you know, all these things are incredibly low priced right now because nobody knows that they're going to be used for, and this is not financial advice. I never would have even stumbled across this until I saw that announcement today from the Fed that they're going to indeed start rocking toward the Fed now and what is known as the Fed dollar to deposit directly into your bank account from the Fed directly to you. No intermediary. They're going Fed direct into your own bank account directly. So they won't even need banks anymore. And so this will probably be a thing to do away with banks. I want to credit agencies or credit unions, where all the loans go, that's on all the books for everybody. That's the whole thing. So I'll read you here. This comes out of the Board of Governors for the Federal Reserve. Press release, March 15th, Chicago. Federal Reserve announced that the FedNow service will start operating in July. Now, it sounds real like mundane, like, oh, FedNow, okay, whatever. Most people are never going to even look up the definition of what FedNow is and then take the next step to see what it is. Because the Federal Reserve will begin the formal certification of participants for the launch of the service. And here's the thing, the certification, you have to have a comprehensive testing curriculum, defined expectations for operational readiness and network experience. Right? You have to have all that in place before you're allowed to even participate on the go live. And this is the thing that irks me a little bit is, you know, people talked about the Fed dollar and the Fed coin, for a better term, all based on FedNow, which is the central bank digital currency issuance through the Federal Reserve, and then having private wallets for everybody as a citizen that they'll deposit directly into. Now, the wallet that they're going to deposit into is different than your bank account, but they will be linked by your Social Security number as such. But, you know, when people called them out on this, they were saying, no, that technology is not remotely advanced enough, remotely mature enough to even handle it. It's going to take us years into the future. And here they are ready to go in July already. Operational readiness needs you need to be able to scale to the trillions of transactions and also have the network experience, meaning you need to have a vast network that's been explored and already used through payment processors and systems. This is going to be a debut with all financial institutions in the United States, along with the U.S. Treasury on board, quote unquote. There's going to be every participating bank. They have something like 13,000 different financial institutions that are going to be coming in on this thing. So that just gives you the scope and breadth of the United States. So Hashgraph, I'd heard about cryptocurrency way back in like 2015. And it was dribbling around and then the circles of people that I knew and I had conversations with. And in 2016, it was like more of a stronger signal. In 2017, like everybody was talking about it. Okay, but at that time, I kept hearing the same conversation about they're going to move to Hashgraph. So I thought it was a different protocol base layer of something interwoven where all protocols and blockchains themselves would run nodes through Hashgraph to settle everything. And like one giant behemoth of, let's say, a base layer to let it all operate well above what Ethereum would be. This would be, you could scale, you could expand, you could do apps, you could do transformation of information, large packets of info that could be untampered with, sent across. And see, this is what I envisioned Hashgraph as being. It is sort of, but it's not going to be the entire base layer. Quant and Constellation are, because these two are going to be able to transmit anything across that we do today in terms of internet, paper, wire transfer, documentation, whether it be FedEx or anything from this point, corporate documents, contracts, anything immutable where it can't be changed. So think about it. The entire world's communications are going to be squeezed into these two protocols. That's why they need to scale. Constellation, Quant, and Hashgraph. That is where the information is going to flow. Like the world's entire information stream is going to run through those three. That's insane to even think about. But the way you're going to pay for it and have access to monies moving through this will be Algorand, Stellar, XDC, and Ripple. Now, IOTA it just sticks out there like a sore thumb. I can't really describe that to you. I don't know where it's going to plug into this thing. But Revolution Radio, thank you for letting us talk about these issues tonight when so many other venues won't. Ransom, the floor is yours. Okay, well, I'll keep it rolling until Ransom comes back here. But IOTA is the Internet of Things. There we go. So the way I look at it, it might be the power of the IoT from all the wireless and 5G towers are all going to be run through IOTA, I think. Because it doesn't have anything to do with the payment processing system. It doesn't have anything really to do with the transfer of information on the digitized side of like contracts and thing. It is what it is of the control of devices around the Ethernet. So they all have their own plug and niche inside the new system. But please realize, Ransom, you hit it up really well in the beginning of the show. We are absolutely going to move through a new system as everything's being rearranged right now. The way we transfer information, the way all devices will be monitored, that's IOTA. And just the way money will move, everything's being rearranged. The deck chairs on the Titanic are being changed over to the Goliath or something right now.
I'm wondering who's going to make it at the end, kind of like the movie Idiocracy, where they only had the one giant Costco where the ceiling was falling in and stuff. This graph that I've been showing while you've been talking that you sent me, it reminds me, if you've ever seen that graph that shows you all of the food manufacturers and back to their parent companies, and then also the little graph that shows you the media corporations and how they're owned by a parent company till it gets down just to a few people. And that's exactly what this looks like. So I'm kind of wondering, so what you're saying is they've already got a plan to consolidate everyone's payment, which fits into what they're doing with all of the stores that they're doing. If you saw Amazon's being sued because they were using facial recognition in stores to recognize customers that they have. And this kind of software and hardware is being used everywhere. And then you link that to not having paper money available to you for whatever reason. Maybe they just decide, that's the end of it because they want to end black markets or other things like that. There's any number of excuses they'll use to do this, but you can see clearly they do have a major plan to replace all of these monies and consolidate it into one electronic form of money that's going to be ran by some algorithm that the lowly employees of whatever company it is won't even know what's going on. And imagine like what you were saying, if all forms of payment are just directly from the Federal Reserve, like if you're getting taxes or whatever, and they already have all of this payment for employment and taxes and all of this set up already for direct deposits into the banks. Now they're just going to direct deposit it into this new form of money. And then you'll have it. And then who's to say that, 1/1000th or 1/1,000,000th of pennies don't disappear in the algorithm, over time. I'm just saying. But it's looking more and more like this will be the form of their tracking and tracing program for all factors of your life, from medical, food. And this all ties into this rationing system. I mean, how else would they get everyone to do things like rationing and tracking and tracing unless every bit of their money or the things that are important to them that they pay for, which unfortunately for the younger generations is things that won't help them really if any kind of natural disaster does come. And you were talking a minute ago about you think maybe that, in your opinion, that is, so nobody gets mad, that the whole global warming thing started kind of when they recognized a natural pattern, and that they had to figure out a way to latch onto that to make sure that at the other end of it, all of the correct families, correct institutions or entities still have control, just like every other reset. Like who has all of those books that they burned in the Library of Alexandria? From evidence that I know, that most of the stuff burned was just all nothingness, like property deeds and who owed who and who shot Nellie in the belly with the meatball. But the really important, knowledgeable, esoteric knowledge and prehistory knowledge that they had there all got moved into private collections. And when you look at the internet and media right now, it's so much of an obvious dumbing down effect. I turned on the smart TV. This is ironic because this is a smart TV. And we don't usually watch TV. So I turned it on because I had a minute I wanted to rest and just sit down with some, passive entertainment. And I turned it on and I used the little free streaming, free cable that they have on there. And there's like 300 or 400 channels of basically nothingness. And I'm going down the channel list, and each channel that's different and completely different than the other one, 90% of those channels have things that don't last longer than 9 seconds. They have perfected the art of idiocracy to the point where even the news and entertainment is broken down into such a small increment that they keep people only engaged for 5 to 9 seconds at a time. And it's kind of like the TikTok effect. TikTok's kind of based on these really short videos with some kind of thing that gives somebody an adrenaline boost or a laugh or whatever it does. But it's incremented and metered, just like we talk a lot about. So I think we're about to face the reality that if you've been prepping and doing all these things, looking forward to being in control of your future and maybe your children's and grandchildren's future, that means actual security in the fact that you would have food and supplies to make it through any of these events that the powers that be seem to keep putting at people, chipping away every bit of not only their inherited wealth, but any gained wealth in today's period is being, inflated away and then the price of everything going up, and then the availability going down. It's a absolute Pavlov training exercise that seems to be going on worldwide, getting people used to the idea that there is only one source. And that brings me back to my point. What do you think will be the main, player as far as food distribution in the near future? Because just like what was that movie where they had the fast food wars in the future? I always forget the name of that movie, but anyway, they were coming out of the sewers to get some Taco Bell and stuff like that. It's weird. I lost the name of that, but that was a future movie about exactly what's kind of going on. And if you've noticed, with the pandemic, all of the mom and pops, restaurants, stores, all of that, just about all of that is gone. And now you can just drive through just about anywhere USA. And the only thing that you're going to be able to choose from are boxed fast food stores and or a Walmart or something like that. And now that the Walmarts, Targets, Wawa, etc., are, shutting down in certain locations, you can kind of use, like, for example, Philadelphia as an example of the future of what I see America doing. And if you look at that, the streets are crime ridden. There's assaults, shootings going on all the time. There's people passed out on the sidewalk from one end to the other that are addicted to drugs and homeless. There is, all of these things going on. And at the same time, the chain stores, like for example, Wawa and Target and others are just closing up shop and leaving. What does that mean? Well, where are they going to go? Well, they're going to go to areas that have more disposable income until those areas also become unstable, because whenever those stores move out of the areas, obviously the people are going to follow those stores, being the last kind of place you can get food. So kind of a long question there is, who do you think is going to come out the other end? Because it seems like they're streamlining the entire economy into a more communist style capitalism, where there's just only one source for everything. And the government's picking the winners and losers every single time. They've got us used to that probably since the Clinton administration, right when the Wall Street was about to fail then. And then they gave us, 2011, 2001. Or you could say they didn't give it to us. It happened, just like all of these other events just so happen to happen at the right time, when there's some kind of disappearing wealth going down or shutting down of civilization going on in the background. And you were talking about Ukraine earlier and just the fields. They're not going to, like you said, they're not going to be planting in areas that have completely been destroyed with toxic chemicals that have fell from the sky or come out of the end of the barrel of giant guns or missiles or any of that stuff. And then you think about what's going on in the U.S. I can name almost 100 disasters that involve the water and the land that's happened in the past 20 years. Like, for example, right now, a bunch of people are getting paid in northern New Mexico because the Environmental Protection Agency's accident that led all of these toxic metals down the Rio Grande, San Juan County up there. So they polluted, or I think it was the Rio Grande. It might have been another river, but either way, they polluted massive amounts of land. So everything down there that farmed off of that is tainted. And then, of course, there's more recent events that have happened that we've already talked about. And I try to talk about these things on the channels that we're on. And I kind of test the water, and I find out that everything that is actually worth talking about specifically that is going on, you cannot talk about it. You will be shut off and banned. So when you're flipping through the channels on cable or streaming services, or even on YouTube or any of that stuff, and you notice all of the things that are million people are watching and very popular and very promoted, none of those are going to help you, and none of those have any kind of truth or anything that will help the human race navigate what's going on right now. And everything that is helpful is most likely banned or prohibited from being talked about. So any topic that you have that they really don't like, and we know a few of them, they'll let you talk about aliens. They'll let you talk about any of these topics. They'll let you talk about the left versus right, who you don't like, the politicians, the dramas. But what you can't talk about, there's something going on there. And it all connects to this new era where things are going to get rough because they are stopping the ability of human beings to live in a free world at all. It's a prison planet, and they're about to cut the rations down. And then I don't know what's going to happen after that. But I'm trying to do it just 1 year at a time and start, my own new culture that's an old culture, which is use everything free I can. Think about what might happen, where I'm going to go, what I'm going to grow, what to save. And that's all everybody should be doing right now, because it seems like from the lower end of poverty, and you were talking about snaps a minute ago, imagine a week or 2 weeks where the food stamp programs or the SNAP benefit programs or any of these programs that dish out money on an electronic card don't work overnight for one reason or another. And a few years back, we had a kind of example of that in local areas, which I think might have been a beta program to see what would happen. Well, one of them was a glitch out where they gave people too much and to see what they would do. And of course, they abused it immediately and bought all of they could. And the other was that nothing showed up at the time of the month it's supposed to show up. Now people are dealing with these same concepts with their actual money disappearing in different banks. I'm sure you remember a few weeks ago when people woke up and their Zelle payments and stuff that are connected to several banks just were not there. It is true that they are replacing the money now, but what happens when they can no longer function, when too many things are failing? And who's going to be the super entity at the other end of it? Because that's what it seems like is going on, is they're getting rid of any economic competition to the government top-down style of communist economics, I guess you could call it.
Well, you could look at it in a different fashion and say they're trying to streamline all the food and goods distribution for the survivors of the event. But then you got to look and say, who are the thrivers in this? Who are the ones that are still in control of the monies to be able to have enough resources to produce the food and the goods to distribute and have distribution channels to the quote unquote survivors of this? The same ones that have been in power for 4,000 or 5,000 years that are still have the metals, the money. They understood the cycles. So if you had a head start to convert everything into wealth holding assets, and you knew the cycle was inbound, you'd swoop everything up. You'd cause the crash. You'd swoop it multiple times, not just once. You'd cause a massive crash. You'd buy everything up. You let it run up again. You know everything that was going to go up in price. You'd harvest all that wealth as well, and then you crash again, and you're already ready, and then you're ready to buy it. It's an insider's club. That's fine. But you got to think about, there is going to be a streamline. So these smart cities that are being set up, I call them human zoos, but it'll be a human zoo for the survivors. There are going to be pockets of people out there that will break off and become their own communities. But eventually, after 10 years and magnetic fields stabilize, there are going to be, the world as we know it will come back together again. Because this magnetic anomaly coming in 2024, where the four gas giants create some sort of second looping toroid field, it's been talked about since antiquity, where Saturn will glow brighter, and so will Jupiter. They become new suns in the skies. Well, that's nothing more than electromagnetic field transference of possibility of energies moving from one encapsulated within the solar system to another. So this Berkey current slows down coming from another star system. Chinese say it's from the Big Dipper, the Beidou Qixing. Okay, that current inflow slows down on top of the star here, our sun. Well, there's going to be vast changes across all planets. That's going to happen for a period of time, but this is a cycle where that strength of the field, that Berkey current, is going to turn back up again. And it's going to power the star back up to what we knew it was before, with fully intact magnetic fields rolling at high strength. Think like the mid-1990s. That was an optimum for the sun to be chugging along where, things were very tight in the jet streams at that point. Things were running well-oiled machine. It was at that point in time, did you notice that? That was the boom And if you go back again, you go back into the, say, late 1950s, we had another very strong magnetic field that created those conditions for incredible agriculture. That's where the Green Revolution popped forward. And then we got massive increases in food production. In the 1990s, again, there was a stability period on the sun, and you notice the economy matched that stability period. Well, we're coming into a completely unstable period with a second magnetic field. And as the sun rips around out of that field in April of 2025, we'll be in the front of the sun. And everything gravitation is going to get ripped in to the face of our Earth here for 4 months. Okay, well, that's going to go on for 10 years. And we're going to come out of that cycle, I assure you we will. And our sun's magnetic fields will strengthen once again, and our jet streams will lock back in place again. Our cloud cells will go back in place again. The cosmic rays will be reduced, and there will be no new cloud layer building. And eventually that precipitation will come back out and turn into water, and it won't re-evaporate. The Hunga Tonga ice crystal eruption in the water, the ice crystals in the mesosphere, that will dissipate by that time. It's going to take another 2 to 3 5 years for all of that ice crystal to start getting down out of the mesosphere into the stratosphere. And then the ozone will re-increase itself because they won't have the ozone breakdown on the ice crystal surfaces. Everything will repair itself cyclically. So when we come back in, everything is going to come back. There will be stable food growing again. This is not going to be a forever thing. We're in and out of it. And literally, if you look in geologic terms, it's a blink of an eye. It's a 10 to 15 year event in and out. Well, that's a huge disruption for humankind here. Has been every single time. And that's what I pinged on way back in 2015. When I started doing the research, I'm like, there's disruptions that occur every single time, and they always seem to encompass the same 3 things. Now, I call it the fingerprint of the grand solar minimum, and it matches perfectly with what we're seeing with the economy. You get massive population migration, because people can't hold jobs, you can't grow food. So people actually moved, walked, wagoned out of where they were, took ships, whatever, they're out of there. The economy fails because there's no way to value anything anymore because 25% of the people died during the Maunder minimum, 25% reduction in human population. Look this up for yourself. I encourage you to do the research. It's called the Maunder minimum. 1640 was the onset. 1680, they were totally out of it. But during that time from 1640 to 1660, 25% of the world's population perished. And you have to look at why. Well, there was raging wars, famines going on, disease swept the land, non-functional supply chains. They were at their minimum at their best, also even in regions. We're not talking about going across the Atlantic for a 2-month journey over to the Caribbean and back, or 4 months, depending on how the winds were blowing, trade winds or whatever. But even regionally between, Asia and Europe, these cycles are known, the onsets are known, the exits are known. But what is known is also what are the things that are going to hold you and take you through this time. Because if your mind frame gets there, you understand we're heading into it right now. We've been in it for about 3 years. 2019, right when the COVID started, massive liquidity crunch then. Suddenly the world needs an excuse for massive money printing and liquidity injection. And so what happens? Well, the last 3 years, as you remember, happened. They were able to push it off for 3 years. We're back at it again. All right, maybe this is the time. The carryover from one system to another is beginning. Because once we exit this time, and the number of people that have perished, starved, moved, they can rewrite history in a moment's notice. And as we come out of this, the whole new 80-year fourth turning cycle is going to begin again. So after our generation is gone, just from old age, that next generation will have been teenagers that lived through this or so, 20 years old, teenagers, maybe a little, 10, 11 years old. And then that third generation just going to forget. They've never lived through it. They will have no idea what has happened at this point in time. It's been like this again and again and again and again and again. So we're going through the cycle. But what really carries you through it? 'Tis the question. So from what I'm seeing with all this setup with the crypto and the ISO 20022 protocol set and already approved, they must think there's not going to be that large of a solar flare or some kind of EMP events to wipe out all computers across the planet, or else this system would be null and void. There's got to be something to it that they understand more in this cycle about the electromagnetic output of the sun in a giant EMP event or not, than just a generalization that, yeah, at the end of the cycle, you generally get one massive EMP. I wouldn't even say a micronova. It's generally electromagnetic. It's not really physical. It's not, dense protons and electron like physical energies blasting at you in a plasma form. It's nothing like that. Electric wave coming through, EMPs, poosh, off the sun. The EMP can cause the sun with no particle discharge. So whoever's rolling through this cycle must understand through, like you say, Library of Alexandria, those records and further back that had mapped out cycles also, there must be something that doesn't scare them about electromagnetic disruption on the planet. I don't know, Ransom. Maybe I'm thinking too deep. It's getting late in the night.
No, I think, with any amount of research, you can figure out that, they have DUMs. Companies have DUMs. They have ARCs for seeds. They have all of these things already prepared for any outcome that might happen like that. What they didn't prepare for is for the rest of civilization to go with them. So it wouldn't be that surprising if some kind of grid down scenario worldwide happened. But it would have to happen probably after they got these 15-minute prisons going. In that way, they could show back up with, resources that they've had buried or hidden, and restart civilization. And guess what? They already have these programs going. They already have the whole system set up. They even have mechanical workers, mechanical systems. And think about how cool you would be to be a pirate in this new era when they break out their technology, when everybody else's is broken. If you had access to a steamboat, I was thinking me and you should go in and get a steamboat for after grid down so we could have, transatlantic trade and stuff like that. But kidding aside, you would have to have all kinds of systems like that, and then they would come out and you would be the competition. So this is even, further off in the future, but you could see a even fourth world war happening over who controls what after everything fell apart. And I agree with you. I think they think that they have it covered technological wise. I did have a question for you. You were talking about crop failures due to UV light and cosmic rays, solar particles, etc. What do you think the bugs will do with that? Because, they live on this entire spectrum that depends on this too. And if certain plants, flowers, etc., don't procreate, then millions, or if not billions, of bugs also are having hard times. And then you can think about it also, the bugs that have no problem with it. Is that why they're trying to get people used to mass quantities of bugs as a filler or replacement for regular foods that we've come accustomed to from agriculture, to kind of supplement their way to the next phase of things? And that might be why a lot of these programs are just being incrementalized to get people used to it. So whenever the saviors come to fix the problems kind of that they set up, because like we've said before, they may be building bunkers and domes and arcs for seeds and genetic materials in space and on the ground, but they're not fixing the power grid infrastructure. They're not maintaining the dams and things like that. So if you were looking at it from someone that thinks that these people, the planners, are planning, you would try to figure out, well, if these are the planners and they're planning, and we have to assume that part of it is not idiotic, that they're not just a bunch of morons up there, that there's some kind of intelligence behind it. And then you would have to assume that the events of the world are part of that plan. And some of those events are non-events, like them not fixing things, like not upgrading our power grid so that it could withstand an EMP from the sun, or an EMP from a rogue nation, or an EMP from an enemy nation that we seem to be making faster than we can pick up guns here. The outcome seems like they've already planned for it, but also after that outcome, and I've talked about this before, the reset necessarily would have to shut down, just like any computer. You have to shut it down, update it, reset it, put a new operating system together, and then when you reboot it, everything is new, everything is working in a different way as planned before the reboot. But I have another little bit of woo-woo kind of in our last little bit here, because we've talked about it before, how AI could possibly, and I'm going to say possibly so nobody thinks that I'm preaching that this is the case, but it's possible that there is some kind of artificial intelligence manipulating the powers that be. And that may be why they put their faith in transhumanism and why they allow AI and learning machines to control so many aspects of the human domain as it stands now. But I was reading this article that got me thinking, because I remembered, I think it was back in the 90s, this scientist claiming the idea that with the right technology, something like a super collider or even lasers put in a circle, that you could send information back to the past via quantum entanglement and some of these other ideas, where you're not going back to the past per se, but you could send information back to the past. Now, if you knew this was possible, you could create a machine that would pick up said information. So if you created the machine, say in like 2013, any information you sent back into the past via these networks of information, you could send messages back to whenever the machine was first made. And, you know, a lot of people have theorized that some of these things are going on. Here's an article from Vice. A growing number of scientists are convinced the future influences the past. And this is just talking about causation and other things. But what if there is actually an ability to receive messages from the future? And this is this guy, Ronald Mallet. He's a PhD in physics at Penn State in the 70s and on. But he had put this theory out many times, and people have talked about it. But what's more reasonable is that artificial or AI learning machines could indeed use that technology. And then you combine the ideas of like the D-Wave and other things in quantum computing, and it becomes more and more possible that they could get information from a future time to decide what kind of actions to take at this time. And in other words, more information than we even give them credit for. And a lot of people think that the people that run everything are just a bunch of morons, power hungry, crazies and stuff. And I argue that they may be crazy, but they are some of the most highly intelligent, high IQ people on the planet in some of these think tanks and groups, and they have plans. And I put it to you that nothing is on accident and everything is planned. So everything that I see is them planning for a complete and total shutdown of the entire human domain at this time. And it makes sense when you think about some of the things they've been preaching about world depopulation and the numbers they want to achieve with that. And those all started from the figure of 8 billion people on the planet being reduced down. So, like you were saying back in, I forget which year, what it was, 16 something, I think you said. And then we got 569, and you can go on and on different events of natural cycles, all the way even to the, Neanderthal that seemed to have disappeared when the magnetic field on the earth was at its smallest. So you can imagine, what would that look like in today's world? What species would disappear? What species would be able to make it through? And if there is a list of these species, is this the reason that the establishments all over the world are funding these programs to bring back animals that no longer exist, not only to change the landscape of the world that we're continuing to live in, but for the aftermath of some unnamed event in the near future? And that way, not only could they bring back animals from the far past, but they could bring back massive numbers of animals from right now, including people. And then I put to you, think about the scientific breakthroughs that we've had in the past 5 years, admitted that they can grow any animal in a plastic bag. And now we have startup companies talking about, baby farms. And then at the same time, infertility rates all over the planet dropping. It kind of paints a picture that they do have everything planned. And the only way to get around it is to start our own plans.
Well, maybe I'll answer your first question. Infrastructure. Why would they maintain it? Why would they? You know it's going to be broken. Like the amount of money, you couldn't even repair it. Like you really couldn't. So envision what is about to happen in 2024 when we come through this magnetic field anomaly. It'll be at its apex October 23rd, 2024, October 24th, somewhere in that range of those 48 hours. You can use any solar geometry or planetary orbital geometry free software that's online. There's choose your one. You can use JPL. I like to use Solar System Scope because it makes the planets a little bit better looking planets than just dots moving around like the JPL model. There's going to be the top mile of the crust is going to have some extreme stresses on it during this time. Massive sinkholes will occur. There's going to be a lot of stretching and rifting. So what, those images you saw in Turkey after there was huge chasms that were built, things ripped apart 200 feet and you're left with this canyon 100 miles long, 200 feet wide from where the earth actually ripped. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Now put railroad tracks, bridges, oil pipelines, natural gas pipelines, fiber optic conduit through that exact same area and it's just going to rip apart. You're not going to be able to fix it. The dams, there's going to be a huge amount of dam bursts during that time. Everything's going to go decentralized after. It has to. It must. That's the only way humanity would have a chance to survive this. Now, during these resets, global liquefaction events, otherwise known as mud floods, for some of you who understand that concept, there's a lot of water, sand, and mud that oozes out of the Earth's crust like toothpaste and covers an enormous amount of structures, roads, etc., buildings, anywhere from 10 to 20 feet deep across the entire planet, along with the rifting, breaking, landslides, and all these things happening. Yes, there'll still be huge pockets of things that are not so greatly affected where people will still be alive and there might be even functioning systems. But in most of it, I'm just saying most, since the supply chains are so long these days, thousands of miles to get something to you, that's just not going to be feasible. What will be feasible is on-demand power that might be because the U.S. UFO disclosures now can bring us closer to free power and Earth's magnetic-driven motors and different types of energy devices that we thought that could operate in a quantum vacuum or something that defy the laws of physics that say you can't get a perpetual motion system moving. Yes, you can. That'll be decentralized on demand. It'll probably be at a local distribution center where they're still going to bill you every month for using it instead of putting one in your house and having free power for the rest of your family's multi-generation needs. That, and also decentralized using Starlink in the quantum system also. You wouldn't need terrestrial internet, as we know, with wired cable to your house. Everybody's going to be hooked up to Starlink. That then you could start to see why all these different approved cryptocurrencies are going to be coming into play. Everything else out in the crypto space is a competitor. Have you noticed how the banks that failed from the Silvergate, the one up in New York, the one over in California, SVB, they were all crypto-heavy banks. They were all the on-roads and off-ramps for investment into crypto where you could actually take millions of dollars in and millions of dollars out. Those banks were handling all those transactions. Now, you can tell me that one went down, but 5 of the banks that all went defunct that kept using that excuse as bond, whatever, they don't have enough liquidity, they had to sell at a loss. All 5 of those were the main 5 banks in America that handled cryptocurrency transactions and customers and companies involved in the crypto space. 5 for 5, that's a little difficult for me to believe, unless they were trying to limit the access to crypto, remove the competition before the Fed dollar kicks in, and then their full plan here with Ripple, Stellar, Hashgraph, IOTA, Algorand, Quant, Constellation, and XDC. That will be the new everything of everything in the crypto space. Now it still runs. You got to have Ethereum because none of those dApps are going to work. You got to have the Ethereum, so that's going to stay. Bitcoin's going to stay. Outside of that, DuByne and Stellar have been battling it since day one to see who's going to be the most flash, instantaneous payment system on the planet. But it looks like Stellar Consensus pulled that off to get that slot inside the new finance system. So again, it's about picking winners and losers and choosing. And a lot of people are going to lose a lot of everything this time. So it's not about how rich can you get. It's about how can you protect your wealth to lose less than the next person. That's the average. That's going to be the average mindset. Now, if you're listening to the program, you're looking at trying to gain dynastic wealth or generational wealth because you can already see the blueprint so clearly, so incredibly clearly. Most everybody else, the other 95% of the people are going to be playing catch up to everything. But if you can see how clearly they've already laid out what they're going to do with the cryptocurrency space, how they're going to decentralize it, but then how do you keep that? You're going to have to keep it on some sort of hard wallet device. You can't leave it in any type of centralized exchange. And there will be a limit. Will there be a limit to, they're going to stop, allowing you to transact in a private wallet or in a hard wallet, something like this. I'm not sure. But it is going to come down to what we see as remnants of the past, whether it be those Roman aqueducts and different types of things that are half buried that, around the planet, every country you go to. I don't care if you're northern, southern hemisphere, whatever, you're seeing the same exact remnants of a prior civilization that are always remnants of it around from the last time. Like were those areas not hit so badly and they still had the aqueducts? And I have a picture that I'm looking at here of the Roman Colosseum. I don't have a date on it. It's a painting from looks like late 1700s style, where the Roman Colosseum, as we know in Rome, is buried 20 feet deep in mud, completely all the way around, but it's turned into a really nice grassy meadow. And everything else is undulating, dirt or grass fields as far as you can see back into the distance, fully covered. There was no, as you consider Rome, of the Roman Colosseum and everything in Rome just being flat as it was. This is for sure covered in mud. So we're going through these resets again and again. So there's going to be things left over. What would be left over from our society? That's the question. Because Ransom, you always talk about prior societies, and I dig it when you do, man.
Exactly for that right now. You kind of led into that. You were talking about what would they break out with this anti-gravitic technology, afterwards, and maybe market that to the new world. I don't think they would do that. I think they would make everybody stay in these, feudalistic type arrangements while they fly overhead with that. And it actually makes sense. If you were going to do that, what would you do with the rest of the world's stuff? Well, if it was what they usually do is keep all the best tech in the military hands or the governmental hands, then you might expect them to get rid of all their old junk, kind of like they did in World War II. Maybe even line up a bunch of old boats or planes or something in the same area to blow them all up at the same time. I'm not saying like a Pearl Harbor or anything, but you notice how all of the old boats just happen to be all set up right there, and then they happen to get taken out. And, that made a lot of people mad. I'm kind of looking for something similar to that. And when you see all these countries giving up all of their weapons that they could be protecting themselves, and it doesn't even make any sense if you think about it. They're talking about worried about this country, unnamed country, so we don't get in trouble. We're not, pro-Russian or nothing. But if Russia was really to invade Europe any more than the areas that they, have been claiming for as far as I can remember in my lifetime, then why would you give up all of your weapons? Unless there was kind of an agreed upon agreement to give all these old planes, trains, and automobiles to the same cause, to just blow them up, get rid of them, especially if you're moving into a new era. Like the new American century talked about, where by 2025, all of the Air Force would be AI. And you've seen that little video where the Russian jet clipped our drone there. they're already setting up as many excuses that they can, so that we go into a third world war, and then there would necessarily be, some kind of following war after that. But
hey, Ransom, could I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw the same video you're referencing, and I saw a little bit of analysis on it of people who understand CGI, and they go, look how clean this is. Look at the propeller before the whatever jet blast came by. There's no yellow stripe on it, but after the screen goes out for a second and then the propeller turns back on, there's a yellow stripe on it. They're like, whoa, it changed in midair.
Actually, what's probably more likely than that being a deep fake of some kind is that the frame rate of the camera in that drone is picking up a certain picture from the speed of the propellers. And once that speed changed due to the fluid or the impact, the speed of that would change, and then the frames per second on the film would change the depiction of that. If you've ever seen a helicopter through a camera, if you have it on the right frames per second, the helicopter will look like the propellers are not moving at all, and the aircraft is just moving along, floating in the sky. I don't think so, but I wouldn't also put it past them, on the other hand, to make some kind of Gulf of Tonkin deep fake video to get everybody up in arms. And as you've seen from this example, there's any number of neocons or even Democrat leftists raging to throw us in another war, while they spend $500 more or so billion over there with different projects, including losing $81 billion of weapons in Afghanistan. You can see that they're setting up for some kind of major conflict there that involves getting rid of all of the old supply of the military industrial complex products, in which case every country on earth afterwards would have to buy new stuff, and then the cycle would continue in the new reset. I was also going to bring up, you were talking about these massive mud floods. If you've been watching the news in California and a lot of the areas where the snow melt off and the torrential rains are impacting, there's mudslides everywhere. The map is being changed locally all over the place with just the last couple of years of weather. And these aren't, you see these in the dozens nightly on the news. So if you really think about all of the events that have happened just in the past 3 years, and you kind of like put them together in a reel, you would realize there is all kinds of destruction and destabilization going on everywhere, from the natural world to the planned man-made kind.
Does seem it does have a timeline, very specific, doesn't it? Like, everything seems to be moving along a timeline, and the plans for whatever it is are following on this timeline, on the urgency of getting things accomplished. Or maybe that's the way it has to be rushed to make it so scattering of an energy wave that it couldn't be gradualism because people would catch on too early. That it had to be gradualism and then cascade, and then a little bit of let off, and then another cascade, and a little bit of let off, and another cascade, to keep people so confused. Because you have to think about it, if we continue with this right here for 2 more years, financial contagion and a world war, the scattering and confusion for 2 years will seem like 2 seconds, and we'll already be into this second magnetic field, and people will be wondering what's going on, why they're perceiving reality differently, why the mountain's moving in front of them, but by that time it's too late. Mission accomplished. That's truly it. Distract until the end. Pull back underground or wherever, off planet. Wait for it. Come back in with your fully intact tech, and then present it to those who are living by campfire and cooking their food over open fires again because there's no electricity. That's where we're going to end up. Now, you're lucky if you have a natural gas well on your property. That would be something to think about, too. Even if you bought a piece of land that had a natural gas well on it, just saying, I'm just playing it out, mind exercise. Even if it was like half an acre or a quarter acre, but it had a natural gas well on it, that would be worth its weight in gold, because even if you weren't going to build a house, it's just a gas station at that point. Could I put that on the carbon credit register? Oh no, I need 20 acres, my bad. Thanks for listening. David DuByne, Ransom, Godwin signing off.